They say love chooses its own path, but what happens when that path leads straight through your heart? He was the one I dreamed of, the one who promised me forever. Until my best friend walked in wearing the dress I should have worn. They built a life together, while I disappeared into the silence. But fate has a strange sense of humor. Because years later, when their world started crumbling, guess whose name they called? Mine. And when I walked through their door again, holding their child in my arms, I realized sometimes revenge doesn't come in fire and fury, it comes wrapped in kindness. And this time, I wasn't the one left behind. But before I continue, make sure you're subscribed to the Revenge by Sophia channel and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. We love to see how far our stories travel. The story began in a small town where sunlight touched every corner of our childhood. The three of us, Lily, Michael, and I, were inseparable. We'd spend hours by the lake, throwing stones, laughing at nothing, dreaming about futures we didn't yet understand. Lily was the wild one, full of life and secrets. Michael was calm, thoughtful, the kind of person who listened more than he spoke. I still remember how his eyes lingered on me when I laughed. There was something gentle in them, something only I seemed to notice. But even then, in that golden time of friendship, shadows were starting to move. Little did I know, those peaceful days were already counting down. And every smile we shared was a step closer to the heartbreak waiting ahead. One evening, we sat in Lily's old attic, the three of us surrounded by candlelight and the smell of dust and rain. Lily was teasing Michael about his serious face, while I quietly watched them from across the room. He smiled at her joke, a smile that used to belong to me. My chest tightened, though I said nothing. I just kept listening, laughing at the right moments, pretending it didn't hurt. Later, as we walked home, Michael slowed his pace to walk beside me. "You've been quiet," he said softly. I smiled and told him I was fine. He didn't press, but his silence said more than words. That night, as I lay in bed, I couldn't forget how his hand brushed Lily's shoulder. Was I losing him already, or had I never had him at all? The next morning, Lily came running to my door with excitement shining in her eyes. "He asked me to dinner," she said, breathless. My heart froze, just for a second, before I forced a smile. I congratulated her, hugged her, said all the things a best friend should. But inside, it felt like someone had reached into my chest and torn something out. That night, I watched from my window as Michael's car headlights disappeared down the road, taking Lily with him. The laughter that used to echo from the three of us now belonged to only two. And I stood there alone, listening to the empty hum of crickets in the dark. A quiet thought crept into my mind, one I would never speak aloud. If love can betray this easily, what else is it capable of? It happened on a Sunday, the kind of day that pretends to be peaceful. The sky was pale and empty, and a quiet wind passed through the curtains as I sat in the cafe where the three of us once met every weekend. Michael arrived first. He looked nervous, his fingers tracing the rim of his coffee cup. Then Lily came, glowing in that way only she could, as if she had stolen all the sunlight from the world. They didn't sit beside me. They sat across from me, holding hands under the table. And when Michael finally spoke, his voice trembled. "We wanted to tell you together," he said. "We're getting married." The world around me blurred. The sound of laughter from another table felt miles away. I smiled, of course, wide and practiced, but inside, something cracked so quietly it almost sounded like relief. Because in that moment I realized I had officially become the outsider. A week later, the wedding invitation arrived in a gold envelope with my name written in Lily's looping handwriting. The paper smelled like roses, her favorite perfume. I stared at it for a long time before opening it. The words were beautiful, perfect, and cruel. "You've always been like a sister to me. I can't imagine this day without you." I laughed, not out of joy, but disbelief. I walked around my small apartment, the silence pressing against me like fog. Their happiness filled every corner of my world, and there was no space left for me. That night, I tried on the dress I planned to wear to the wedding. It looked beautiful in the mirror, but so did sadness. And when I wiped a tear from my cheek, I realized I didn't even know if it was for Michael or for Lily. Because losing a friend can hurt just as much as losing a lover. The church bells rang like distant thunder. Everyone was smiling, dressed in soft colors and perfume. I stood at the back, invisible among the crowd. Lily walked down the aisle, glowing in white, her arm looped through her father's. Michael waited at the altar, his eyes full of emotion I once thought belonged to me. When their eyes met, the air shifted. I felt it like a knife in the chest. As they said their vows, I smiled again. I smiled for every picture, every toast, every lie that kept me standing upright. But when the music began and the lights dimmed, I slipped out the back door and walked into the night. The cold air felt sharp, almost cleansing. I looked up at the stars and whispered, "Be happy, both of you." But somewhere deep inside, another voice whispered back, "This isn't the end." The morning after the wedding, the town looked washed out, pale sky, pale streets, pale faces. I stood by my window, watching the newlyweds drive away toward their honeymoon, their car leaving behind a trail of dust that looked almost like smoke. I thought I'd cry, but there were no tears left, just an aching stillness. Inside my small apartment, the air smelled like burnt coffee and forgotten flowers. Every picture frame, every memory felt heavy. I packed quietly, one piece of clothing after another, folding my life into a single suitcase. No one knew where I was going. I didn't know either. I only knew I couldn't stay where their laughter still echoed. As the train pulled away that evening, I watched the town shrink into the horizon, swallowed by dusk. And in that fading light, I whispered, "Let them forget me." But part of me prayed they wouldn't. The city I moved to was colder, louder, full of faces that never looked twice. I rented a small room above an old bookstore. The owner was kind but distant, his eyes always half hidden behind reading glasses. It suited me. I wanted to disappear quietly, like dust settling in forgotten corners. Days turned into weeks. I worked, ate, slept in silence. Sometimes, at night, I'd hear laughter drifting up from the street below, and it would sound like them. I'd reach for my phone out of habit, but there were no messages, no missed calls. Just an empty inbox that stared back at me like a wound. I tried to write to them once, a letter I never sent. It began with, "I'm happy for you." But the words felt heavy, false. So I tore it up, piece by piece, until the floor was covered in tiny white lies. Months passed, and I began to vanish in small ways. My laughter faded. My reflection grew unfamiliar. Pale skin, tired eyes, quiet lips. It was as if I'd traded my face for someone else's. One night, the lights flickered in my apartment, and for a brief moment, I saw movement in the mirror behind me, a shadow that didn't belong. I turned, but nothing was there. Just the sound of the wind pressing against the window pane. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was the past refusing to die. But that night, I dreamed of Lily, her wedding dress stained with rain, her voice calling my name from far away. When I woke up, my heart was pounding. And for the first time I realized, you can leave a place, but the memories follow. And sometimes they find you again. Years slipped by like mist, days folding into months, months into silence. I built a life that looked normal from the outside, a small teaching job, a new apartment, new neighbors who knew me only as Mara. That wasn't my real name, but it felt safer that way. I learned to move gently through the world, never drawing attention. The old bookstore owner retired, and I took his place, selling stories that weren't mine to strangers who'd never guess what I'd left behind. Sometimes, when I locked up at night, I'd pass by the mirror near the door and almost expect to see my younger self, the girl who still believed in promises. But she was gone. Still, in quiet moments, when the city lights flickered just right, I could almost hear a faint echo, Lily's laugh, Michael's voice. I told myself it was just memory, but deep down I knew better. One evening, while closing the shop, I found a letter slipped beneath the door. No name, no address, just a picture inside. It was a printed photo from a social media post. Lily and Michael, smiling, holding a little girl between them. The caption said, Our world in one frame. My fingers trembled. The ink on the back was still fresh, as if someone wanted me to see it. But who? And why now? I sat on the floor, staring at the child's face, her bright eyes, her soft smile. There was something hauntingly familiar about her. I could almost hear Michael's voice whispering, "She has your calm." The room felt colder suddenly, as though the photo had pulled the past back through the walls. I looked outside. The street was empty. Yet I couldn't shake the feeling that someone, somewhere, had decided my silence had lasted long enough. After that night, the quiet of my life began to unravel. Small things started happening. A knock at the door with no one outside, faint perfume in the air that smelled like lilies, the bookstore lights flickering for no reason. One morning, a customer mentioned seeing me in town years ago, at a wedding perhaps. My hands went cold around the cup I was holding. I hadn't told anyone about that life. Each evening, I found myself walking to the train station, staring at the timetable as if waiting for a sign to go back. But where would I go? And what would I find? Then one night, as I lay in bed, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "It's been too long. We need to talk." Al. My breath caught. Lily. But how could it be? The call came late, just past midnight, when the city was asleep and rain pressed against my window like restless fingers. The phone's vibration cut through the silence, its glow painting the room in cold blue light. For a moment, I just stared at it, frozen between fear and disbelief. The number was unknown, but something deep inside told me who it was. I picked up. A breath, shaky, hesitant, filled the line. Then a voice, soft but broken. "It's me, Lily." Her name hit me like a wave. I hadn't heard it spoken aloud in years. "Lily," I whispered, my throat dry. Her breathing trembled. "Please don't hang up. I need you." There was something in her tone, a weight, a shadow, that made the hairs on my neck rise. And before I could ask anything more, she said the words that changed everything. "Michael's gone and I'm not well." After the call, I sat on the edge of my bed, listening to the storm outside. The words echoed in my head. "I need you." The years between us dissolved in an instant, replaced by an ache I thought I'd buried. I wanted to hate her, to hang up and let her voice fade back into the dark. But I couldn't. Old habits die quietly, and love, even wounded love, doesn't die at all. I spent the rest of the night pacing. Every sound in the apartment felt louder than usual. The clock ticking, the wind scraping against the glass, my heart beating too fast. At dawn, I looked at my reflection in the mirror. I barely recognized the woman staring back. But her eyes, my eyes, carried something I hadn't felt in years. Resolve. By morning, I was already packing my suitcase again. But I couldn't shake one question from my mind. If Lily was the one who called, why did the number feel so unfamiliar? The road back home was long and gray, lined with bare trees that looked like reaching hands. I hadn't been there in years, but the air still smelled the same, like damp earth and fading memories. The town hadn't changed much, but I had. As the car rolled past familiar streets, I saw the church where they married, its white paint peeling now, its bells silent. The irony wasn't lost on me. When I reached their house, the same house that once held all our laughter, I froze. The garden was overgrown, the windows dark. It didn't look like a home anymore. The front door opened slowly, and there she was. Lily, pale, fragile, wrapped in a blanket. Her smile tried to form but failed halfway. "I didn't think you'd come," she said softly. I stepped inside, the door closing behind me with a sound that felt final. The air smelled of medicine and old memories. And somewhere deep inside the house, a child laughed. The first thing that hit me was the smell, faint lavender mixed with something sterile, like medicine and loss. The walls were the same pale cream, but the pictures had changed. Gone were the wedding photos I remembered. In their place hung portraits of a little girl, smiling into the camera with Lily's eyes. Lily guided me inside slowly, her hand trembling as she reached for the back of a chair. Her face was thinner now, framed by hair that had lost its shine. I noticed the oxygen tank beside the sofa, the soft hiss of it filling the air like a slow, steady heartbeat. "It's not much," she said with a faint laugh, "but it's still home." I nodded, forcing a smile, even as the weight of the place pressed on me. Every corner, every shadow whispered an old memory. And when I glanced toward the hallway, the one that led to the room where they spent their wedding night, I felt it. That old ache. Still alive. Still waiting. He appeared in the doorway, like a ghost I wasn't ready to see. Michael. Older now, shoulders heavier, face lined with years and quiet regret. He froze when he saw me, as if he wasn't sure whether to step forward or disappear. "Mara," he said softly, using the name I'd tried to hide behind. But the way he said it told me he knew the truth. He always had. "Hello, Michael," I whispered. The silence between us stretched long, filled with the sound of the clock ticking on the wall. He looked tired, not just in body, but in soul. "She's been asking for you for months," he finally said. "I didn't think you'd come." His voice cracked slightly, and for a moment, I saw the boy I once loved buried beneath the man time had built. I looked at him, at the house, at the life they'd built without me, and I couldn't help but wonder, was it guilt that kept his eyes soft? Or something else entirely? Later that evening, Lily fell asleep on the couch, the oxygen whispering beside her. I wandered through the house quietly, my footsteps muffled by old rugs and older memories. The walls seemed to breathe, alive with laughter that no longer existed. I paused by their wedding photo on the mantel. Michael and Lily, smiling, young, unstoppable. And there, in the corner, half hidden in the frame, me, the forgotten piece of their perfect picture. The longer I stared, the more the faces in the photo seemed to shift, their smiles stretching, the light fading. I blinked, but the image stayed strange, twisted, unsettling. Behind me, I heard a faint creak, footsteps on the stairs. I turned quickly, but there was no one there. Only the sound of a child's giggle drifting from upstairs, followed by a whisper, soft, almost playful. "She's been waiting for you." I froze. And for the first time since I arrived, I wasn't sure if I was among the living or the haunted. Morning seeped into the house in thin, gray light, carrying the scent of damp wood and something sweet. Maybe cereal, maybe innocence. I heard small footsteps pattering down the hallway before I saw her. A tiny figure in pink pajamas appeared at the kitchen door, clutching a stuffed rabbit by its ear. Her eyes, soft brown with flecks of green, stopped me in my tracks. Michael's eyes. She tilted her head. "Are you the lady from Mommy's stories?" she asked, voice clear as a bell. I forced a smile, though my throat tightened. "Maybe I am." She came closer, studying me the way children study the sea. Curious, fearless. When she reached out and took my hand, her skin felt warm against my cold fingers. "Mommy says you make the best paper birds," she said. A shiver ran through me. I hadn't folded one since the day I left. I whispered, "Did she teach you that?" She nodded. "She said you'd show me how." And just like that, the past had found a heartbeat again. We sat at the kitchen table, scraps of paper scattered like tiny wings between us. The child's laughter filled the house, soft, real, dangerous. Every crease of the paper reminded me of Lily and the rainy afternoons we used to spend making the same cranes. But this time, Lily was in the next room, coughing weakly behind a closed door. "Daddy says Mommy sleeps too much," the little girl murmured, her small fingers trembling as she tried to fold the edge. "He cries when he thinks I'm not looking." Her words were knives wrapped in sweetness. I looked at her, at this innocent echo of a love that had once been mine, and my chest ached. Outside, wind began to rise, whistling through the cracks in the windows, and for a moment, I thought I heard a whisper in it. Lily's voice, faint, calling my name. The child looked up suddenly. "Did you hear that?" she asked. I nodded slowly, though I didn't know what we'd heard. Only that it was coming closer. That evening, Lily asked to see us both. Her face was ghost white, her breathing shallow but steady. She reached for my hand first, then for her daughter's. I want you to be her godmother, she said. Her eyes met mine, pleading, tired, full of something that felt like apology. Michael stood near the doorway, silent, his hand tightening on the frame. The air between us pulsed with things unsaid, memories, regrets, all the moments that never got to live. I looked at the little girl, her head resting against Lily's arm, and felt the pull of something I couldn't name: love, guilt, fate, maybe all three. I'll take care of her, I whispered. I promise. Lily smiled faintly, a single tear sliding down her cheek. I know, she said. The clock on the wall ticked once, twice, and in that silence, I heard the softest sound, almost like a sigh. Later, when I tucked the child into bed, she looked up and whispered, "Good night, Godmother." The word lingered in the air like a spell, binding, unbreakable. And somewhere behind the closed door, Lily's coughing stopped. Days passed in quiet rhythm, morning light, medicine bottles, and the slow, steady hum of Lily's oxygen machine. The child played in the living room, her laughter a fragile thread holding the house together. Lily grew weaker, her skin translucent, her eyes distant. Sometimes I caught her staring at me, as if trying to say something she couldn't. One afternoon, as I helped her sip water, she whispered, "Do you ever think about him? About what we did to you?" Her voice was soft but sharp, like glass under silk. I didn't answer. I couldn't. The weight of her question pressed against the walls, until even the air seemed to bend under it. She smiled faintly, her lips pale. "You were always the better one," she murmured, eyes fluttering shut. "That's why I knew you'd come back." Outside, thunder rolled in the distance, low, patient, like the sound of something waking. And I realized the storm wasn't just in the sky. That night, I found Michael sitting alone in the kitchen, the lights dim, a bottle of whiskey half empty beside him. He looked up as I entered, his eyes red, his hands trembling. "She doesn't have much time left," he said, voice breaking. "I don't know what I'll do when she's gone." For a long moment I said nothing. The clock ticked. The house creaked. Then, quietly, he added, "I never stopped thinking about you." The words hung in the air like smoke, dangerous and familiar. I looked at him, searching his face for truth, but all I found was regret. "Then why did you marry her?" I asked, my voice colder than I intended. He swallowed hard. "Because she told me you'd left, that you didn't want me anymore. She showed me your letter, the one you never sent." My heart stopped. My letter, torn, shredded, destroyed. How could she have had it? And suddenly, the silence around us wasn't grief anymore. It was revelation. The next morning, sunlight filtered through the curtains like broken glass. Lily was sitting up in bed, weak but alert, her gaze fixed on me as I entered. She smiled faintly, as if she already knew what I'd learned. "You found out," she whispered. My chest tightened. "Why, Lily?" Her fingers twisted the blanket, her voice trembling. "Because I loved him too much to lose him. I thought if you left, I'd finally have peace." A tear slid down her cheek. But I was wrong. I lost both of you. The room felt heavy, too small to hold everything between us. I wanted to hate her. I wanted to scream. But all I could do was watch as her breathing grew shallower, her eyelids heavier. "Take care of them," she said, her voice fading. "Take care of what's left." And when she closed her eyes again, the silence that followed wasn't peaceful. It was hollow. Because beneath her last words, I could still hear it, that quiet whisper from the dark corners of the house. Some debts are never paid in full. The night before Lily passed, the world outside went unnaturally still. No wind, no insects, no sound, as if even the night was holding its breath. The house was dimly lit, the lamps casting golden halos that trembled against the walls. Lily's breathing was uneven, every inhale followed by a soft rattle that echoed down the hall. I sat beside her bed, holding her frail hand, tracing the blue veins that pulsed faintly beneath her skin. Michael had fallen asleep in the next room, exhausted, one arm draped over their child. Lily stirred, opening her eyes for just a moment. "Do you hate me?" she whispered. I wanted to tell her yes. That I hated her for every stolen glance, every lie wrapped in love. But the truth refused to leave my mouth. Instead, I said softly, "No, Lily. I never could." She smiled faintly. "Then maybe I can go in peace." But as her hand tightened weakly around mine, I felt it, the chill that meant something was already leaving. After she fell asleep, I wandered through the house, the air thick with the smell of medicine and wilted flowers. Something pulled me toward the desk in her bedroom, the one she'd kept locked for years. The key was still there, tied to a ribbon on the handle. My fingers trembled as I turned it. Inside, neatly folded letters, dozens of them, all addressed to me, each one dated, each one never sent. I opened the top one. "I'm sorry for everything. He still dreams of you. Some nights, he calls your name." Tears blurred the words, but I kept reading, about her guilt, her fear, her illness. About how she'd tried to tell me the truth, but couldn't bear the thought of losing what little love she had left. The last line stopped my heart. "If anything happens to me, promise you won't hate him. Promise you'll take care of our daughter. She's the best part of both of us." I pressed the paper to my chest. The house groaned softly, as if it, too, was grieving. Just before dawn, I woke to the sound of the wind rising again, slow at first, then building into a low, mournful howl. I hurried to Lily's room. She was still, her eyes half open, fixed on something beyond me. Michael was already there, kneeling beside the bed, his face buried in her sheets. I touched her wrist cold. Still. The air felt heavy, charged with something invisible. The little girl stood in the doorway, her rabbit clutched to her chest, eyes wide. "Is Mommy sleeping?" she whispered. Neither of us could answer. Michael pulled the blanket up to Lily's chin, his hands trembling. Then he looked at me, truly looked, and for the first time, I saw nothing of the man I once loved. Only loss. Outside, the storm broke. Rain hammered the roof, thunder cracked open the sky. And through it all, Lily's photo on the bedside table fell face down. As I turned it upright, I realized something chilling. In the reflection of the glass, my face and hers had almost merged. And maybe that's exactly how it was meant to be. The day of the funeral was drenched in cold rain, the kind that seeps into your bones and stays there. The sky was the color of iron, and the wind carried the scent of wet soil and lilies, her favorite flower. People came in dark coats, whispering prayers and memories they barely remembered. Michael stood at the front, holding their daughter's small hand, his face hollow, like someone who'd forgotten how to breathe. When they lowered her into the earth, I felt something strange, not relief, not sadness, but a deep, still ache that didn't belong to grief alone. After everyone left, I stayed. The umbrella trembled in my hand, the rain soaking through my shoes. "Goodbye, Lily," I whispered. "You took everything from me, and still, I'm the one left to keep what you loved alive." The wind rose suddenly, almost like a sigh. And as I turned to leave, I thought I heard her voice behind me, soft, distant, and sorrowful. "Take care of them, like you promised." I didn't look back. Weeks passed in quiet fragments, the echo of a house half empty, the small footsteps of a child who asked fewer questions every day. Michael buried himself in work, returning home later and later, while I became the one who made breakfast, who brushed tiny curls in the morning light, who wiped away tears in the night. The little girl started calling me Auntie. Then, one evening, as we tucked her into bed, she said it without hesitation. "Good night, Mommy." My heart stopped. Michael froze beside me, his eyes searching mine for something neither of us could name. "She meant Godmother," he said softly, but his voice shook when he said it. I smiled faintly, brushing the girl's forehead. "It's okay," I whispered. "She can call me whatever she wants." Outside, the wind rattled the windows, and for a brief second, the shadows on the wall looked like three figures, one small, one broken, and one watching from somewhere far beyond. And I wondered if love had turned to punishment, or if this was mercy disguised as fate. Months later, Michael asked me to stay, permanently. He said it gently, almost fearfully, as if the words themselves might shatter the fragile balance we'd built. "She needs you," he said. But in his eyes, there was something else, that old, quiet longing I thought had died years ago. I agreed.
For the child, I told myself.
For Lily's memory. But some nights, when the moonlight slipped through the curtains and I felt his presence beside me, I'd think about the past, about what was stolen, and what was returned. I became the caretaker, the comfort, the quiet ghost that held together what remained. And though I told myself it wasn't revenge, every time I heard the child call me Mommy, a strange peace settled in my chest. Not satisfaction, not victory, just the haunting calm of a circle finally closed. Lily had taken my love once, but in the end, I became everything she left behind. And sometimes late at night, when I tucked the child into bed, I'd glance at the photo of Lily on the wall and whisper, "You see, my dear friend, you'll always be part of this family, just not in the way you planned." They thought betrayal would destroy me, but it only carved me into something stronger. Lily's memory lives on through her child, a child who calls me Godmother, not knowing the story written beneath that title. Michael looks at me now with the eyes of a man who finally understands what he lost, and what fate has returned to him in another form. I never sought revenge. I only waited for truth to come full circle. And when it did, it didn't scream. It whispered. Because sometimes, the sweetest revenge is peace. And in the quiet moments, when the child laughs and calls my name, I realize I didn't lose everything. I simply became what destiny meant me to be.